We're going to do a little story time today. So this is a story of how I learned when to take feedback and when to ignore it, and how to listen to my own thoughts and ideas of what makes art good or not. To start off, so I've been a professional illustrator for over a decade now, and I started drawing and getting really into art. By the time I was 9 years old, I knew that it was what I wanted to do for a job. Like, I wanted to work for Disney when I was 9. Until I was in college, I was really just doing whatever I wanted. I didn't necessarily have a lot of growth during that time period, but I was having a lot of fun, which is important. In high school, just in general, as a student, I had a 4.0. So I was very good at school, and I always had good grades. So when I got to college and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to become an artist. It's a career. This is a huge decision, very risky, because everyone tells you that not many people make it. I'm going to go for it. And then I go into my art classes and I can't get into the program. My art wasn't good enough to get approved to be into the Bachelor's of Fine Arts program for animation illustration. So I got rejected from the program. And at first I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just try again, no big deal or whatever. And then I did it again and I got rejected again. And and so this was like a shock for sure. And I not necessarily that I thought that I was like the best artist ever, but the fact that I couldn't even get to the program. Like I wasn't even good enough to get accepted into college. Like, I was in the college program but not the major. So I couldn't even get accepted into the major, which is like, how am I going to make it in a career if I can't even do that? That was very scary. And then in most of my art classes, when I started out at like a C, and by the end of the class, unless it was like a teacher who just gave everybody A's, by the end of the class, I usually was able to do like B+ or A-. I was a straight A student my entire life up to this point. Getting C's all of a sudden in my chosen career and profession, and something that like I feel like everyone's like, oh yeah, art classes are so easy, they can just give you A's. It was not, and I was failing basically. I was not making it. I was starting out at the bottom of the class and slowly through really hard work getting to be like decent, but never really standing out. I think that really shook me as an artist and as a person. I went to my teachers and I wanted to know why I didn't get into the program. What do I need to work on? What am I missing? And they wanted me to work on figure drawing. So I didn't just take every single figure drawing class provided at that college. I went to like other colleges and did those figure drawing classes also at night. I did a summer program where all I did was figure drawing for like an entire summer. And I just worked so tirelessly hard at it to get approved. And after that, I did get into the program, which was amazing, thanks to that really, really hard work. But I think it made it so that I was reliant on my teachers or professors or other students who were better than me to help me understand what I wasn't doing correctly, so that I could get into the program, so that I could get good grades, so that I could get better as an artist. And I definitely had tons of improvement in my art from a technical standpoint, absolutely, during this time period. And I'm very grateful for that. And that's why I still think there are definitely times when you should listen to feedback. The amount of growth I had during that time period was like 10 times greater than I had any time period before. And it was absolutely valuable. But it made it so that I couldn't decide for myself what was good anymore. I would draw something, I'm like, I don't know, maybe. I have no idea what I'm doing wrong or right. I can't decide for myself. If a teacher comes to me and says I did it wrong, I did it wrong. I'm going to fix it. I no longer was able to have my own opinion about my art, which I think was the reason why in my classes I was able to get to like a B+, A- range. I was able to be a good artist, but I couldn't get past that. So this is what changed for me. I was towards the end of school. So for me, it took about 4.5 to 5 years to get through college. So I'm getting to one of my last classes, and the teacher was not a very supportive person. And I felt like he just ridiculed and bullied people. I lost respect for this person. And that was actually what helped me break through. So when he would tell me what to do in class, I started not feeling like I should. I remember like, okay, no matter what I do, he's not going to like it. No matter what I do, I'm not going to get a good grade. So I was sort of burnt out and frustrated, and I decided to just draw something, and I didn't care what he thought. And I started almost doing like the opposite of what they were recommending. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. I know that he doesn't like this or they won't like it, but I like this. I'm going to just draw something that I like. Did that, and I brought it to school the next day, and it was the first time I actually got a positive review from him. What I realized was when I did the thing that I liked, even though I wasn't sure if it was exactly what they wanted or it wasn't correct or whatever, I actually started doing better in my classes. More, I started to not care what they thought, I think is really the important bit, the better I did. And then, so I think I finished that class, and then I'm in my final class, and I was pretty downtrodden as a student in that class. Like, I was not a top student, but I wasn't the lower student. I was definitely like middle of the rung. And I had gone to my teacher, and I was like, I'm really having a trouble like deciding between being an illustrator or doing storyboarding, because mostly this school was geared towards film. So like children's book wouldn't have even been an option. But I was like, I love storytelling and I love illustration. I can't decide between the two. His response was to tell me to do 3D modeling because it's really hard to get jobs otherwise. So for me, I was like, okay, so I just spent like 6 years in art school so that I could do something that I love. And you want me to go do something I hate, which is 3D modeling, just so I can get a job. That makes zero sense. I'm like, why would I have gone through all this work to just end up doing a job I hate in the end? Like, that didn't make any sense to me at all. So again, I started to feel like they don't believe in me. I don't think I want the same things they want out of my career. And they're not going to support me. So I stopped wanting their approval or caring about their approval. So what I started doing is every time they gave us an assignment or they made a comment about like, oh, you need to do it this way, and whatever it was that I thought that they're like, you need to do it this way, but I didn't think it was a good reason, I would do the exact opposite. So for example, there was one day where they're like, all of your illustrations need to be horizontal, so this way instead of vertical this way, because in film is horizontal, so don't make any vertical images for your illustrations. And I thought that was really dumb. I absolutely hated that feedback because it was so arbitrary. And what if you don't want to go in film? And even if you are doing film, you can have a scene that starts here and zooms up. So that didn't make any sense to me. So I immediately that night made an illustration that was vertical and brought it in the next day. And again, they loved it and I got great marks. So I just kind of became this person who was like, if they gave a piece of feedback that I didn't agree with, I immediately did the opposite. And I just started, but what it did is it taught me to understand what I do and don't like. And when I get feedback that I don't think is applicable to me or what I'm trying to do, I started to learn when to set that aside and when to listen. And for me, that was the part of my career where I really started to understand my point of view, my style, what I'm trying to create and communicate. And to the point where when I was finally applying for jobs after college, which is the most terrifying time of my life, I had an interview. They do an art test. So they give you an art test and you create it and then you turn it in. And they wanted like a monster in a city with like a girl or a human character, I guess. And I knew every single person who did this art test, because of the type of company that it was going to do like a monster destroying the city at night with like a girl in their hand or something. And I really didn't want to do that. And it's not the kind of stuff I like to draw anyway. And so instead, I did a drawing of this like blobby, ugly monster on a date with this really pretty girl, like walking across the street in the city. And I have never been rejected for a job faster than I was for that job. But the illustration I was able to keep in my portfolio. And when I was applying for jobs at Disney, that was the job, one of the pieces that every single person in my interview pointed out to and was like, we love this illustration. And that's why I did it. Because even though literally while I was creating that illustration, I'm panicking because I'm like, I'm hearing my teacher's voices in my head saying, your portfolio should be geared to the company that you're applying to. and you should make it so that they like it and whatever. And the other part of my voice being like, you want to get a job doing something you love, make the thing that you love, and eventually you will find the company that fits you, or the job that fits you, or the people who want to buy your stuff that fits what you love. And I did get rejected from that job because I didn't make it something that they really wanted. But I know that if I had gotten that job, I would have been unhappy and I wouldn't have lasted long. And so I stayed focused, and I was panicking the whole time, but it paid off 100%. And even so I worked for Disney Games for a while, and that studio closed. And I was looking at more game companies, and so many of them are really hyper realistic, and a lot of them are more mature themes, and that's not what I like to create. I create stuff for children or for like moms and cute stuff, and there weren't very many jobs in that area, and I realized that I just needed to transition my career, and that's how I ended up doing work for children's illustration, because it just made more sense. So even though all through college they told me that's not a career you can have, nobody makes any money doing that, and even going into that career, people of the community say that exact same thing. I'm like, well, that's what makes sense for me. That's what I'm creating. That's what I want to create. That's the thing I should do.